Donald Trump has always demanded loyalty, but now that it's run dry, it's getting really bad for him. Marjorie Taylor Greene has never really had more fun than it seems like she is right now attacking Donald Trump. But it is not the first person who is bringing up the Epstein scandal, who was kicked out of Donald Trump's inner circle. Because the former fired White House advisor is now exposing Donald Trump and blowing up this Epstein scandal. As we saw, 95,000 new photos released today. And we are going to get into it all. But before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video, and if you haven't already, and you enjoy our channel, to hit that subscribe button, because it goes a long way in supporting our work in covering this cover-up. Now, before we get into that fired advisor, who is now blowing up this Epstein scandal even more, and exposing the cover-up that Donald Trump has always been involved in. And I'm talking back to Epstein's death, and of course, even before that, I want to start with Adam Schiff calling out the cover-up that is currently happening under Pam Bondi's jurisdiction in the DOJ right here.
In the early days of the Trump administration, and whether they've been replaced by anyone of any independence is very much an open question. But I have more confidence generally in the offices of Inspector General than I do in the top leadership of the Justice Department. There have been reports that the FBI devoted 1,000 agents to combing through these files, flagging wherever Trump's name appeared. And there's good reason to be suspicious of whether any documents that might be incriminating the president will see the public light. So one way of trying to make sure that the disclosures are fulsome, as required by the law that was passed on a bipartisan basis, is to get the Inspector General to review the custody of these documents to determine whether any are missing. And the administration is supposed to give us a log of anything they're withholding to determine whether that log is complete or whether the thing's missing from there too.
Yes, it feels like if you were able to look at the log, which they should be able to, if there's more than names, if there's long swaths of things, it raises a lot of questions. Now, the deadline, as I just noted, for the White House to release all the files under the bill Congress passes a week from tomorrow. What expectation? You know, I think a lot of people out there are thinking we're going to see everything that day. It seems hard to believe that's going to be the case. I wish it was. But what expectation do you have on what we may see that day?
Well, I guess my expectation is that they will produce something. And now that something that they produce may be heavily redacted, and they may claim that those redactions are merely to protect the privacy of the victims. And if they are redactions for that purpose, they would be completely legitimate. We want their privacy respected. But do we trust the administration to make those redactions only for that purpose, or to over-redact in a way to protect or avoid anything incriminating or embarrassing of the president or any of his allies? I don't think we can have that confidence. I would feel much better if I had a neutral party like an Inspector General making those determinations. And in the log that they provide, it could say just very generically, this category of documents has been withheld, those documents going to an ongoing investigation. Again, that is not going to, I think, satisfy anyone. So we'll see how fulsome the production is and how much we're going to have to fight to really see what they're holding.
I just talked with Abby Lowell about the Justice Department's latest failure in their attempt to indict New York Attorney General Letitia James. Third time is not a charm for them. You've seen, of course, the DOJ try to chase you with the threat of similar charges. What's your reaction to the news today?
It is really shocking because, of course, the bar in the grand jury is so low. You don't have to prove anything beyond a reasonable doubt. It's merely showing probable cause, and the prosecutor who goes into that grand jury decides what that grand jury sees.
We know what Pam Bondi is trying to do. We know what Donald Trump's ultimate goal was in pretending that he supported transparency. When he signed that bill to force the release of the Epstein files, we knew that Donald Trump would claim credit. He immediately did. But we also knew that that would be it, that Donald Trump wanted us to believe that putting pen to paper meant that everything was released. Everything was fine. They were transparent. And now we can move on. But Pam Bondi has put obstacle after obstacle after obstacle in place of actual transparency because all they have ever cared about is the political games and changing the narrative. But while Pam Bondi is trying desperately to block everything she can coming out of the DOJ, there's nothing that she can do. Pam Bondi has no purview over Robert Garcia. Pam Bondi has no purview over the Oversight Committee. Pam Bondi cannot get in the way of the Epstein estate. And the 95,000 plus photos released today show just that. But they also show a thread that I think has been so underreported when we're talking about this Epstein cover-up, and that is between Steve Bannon and Jeffrey Epstein. As we saw today, these photos paint a much clearer picture of the relationship that we know existed, that has been extensively reported on between Steve Bannon and Jeffrey Epstein. And really, just go to show how close these two were right up until Epstein's death. Why I find these photos to be so interesting, and why I think the story needs to be reported on much more than it already has, is because we need to look at the Epstein cover-up as something that has gone back not even just into Donald Trump's first term, but before he became president. Clearly, according to Jeffrey Epstein's brother, it was of some worry to him while he was on the campaign trail. So he understood that this was a political liability. But let's go back even further. Donald Trump had always associated himself with people who were close to Jeffrey Epstein, whether that be because he thought that those people could help get him off for similar crimes, or just because he wanted to keep not his enemies, but people who had dirt on him close. It's important to keep in mind. But then, we go to Donald Trump's first administration, hiring Alan Dershowitz to defend him in his impeachment, bringing Alex Acosta into his cabinet. These are people who were close to Jeffrey Epstein, and Donald Trump kept them close to him as well. And then, you look at Bannon, who was fired from the Trump administration, and then went on to essentially work as a PR guy for Epstein. They were also buddies, talking to each other about their ideas of populism all the time. Certainly weird coming from the billionaire pedophile Jeffrey Epstein, but they were close. And I understood both of them, that their relationship might have put a strain on their relationship with Trump. And of course, Jeffrey Epstein talked extensively about how afraid Donald Trump was of the friendship between Bannon and Epstein and Steve Bannon up until the moment that Jeffrey Epstein died. Killed still, I guess, up for dispute, and in my opinion, at least talked about how there were people after him. So Bannon is doing all this PR, maybe to get back in the good graces of Donald Trump for Jeffrey Epstein. And Jeffrey Epstein is talking about how worried Donald Trump is. And there is so much more. And it's not just coming from the Epstein estate anymore, but newly released court filings, evidence, and a grand jury testimony that is making it clear that Pam Bondi can only cover up so much for so much longer. And Ari Melber broke it all down right here.
These are two separate cases where two judges have ruled for major Epstein transparency and basically changed what is longstanding precedent on what materials you release from criminal probes. I'm going to walk you through it here in plain English. The big development today is one of these cases, a judge granting a motion to release sensitive Epstein records, specifically to unseal what are grand jury records in the Ghislaine Maxwell case. Now, that mirrors another ruling, and I'll tell you about that as well. But if this sounds like a huge change, it is. If you think back to every case you've ever looked into, maybe you're a true crime Whitey Bulger fan, maybe you remember the Mueller probe, grand jury materials are protected by Rule 6, which is one of those sort of long-standing rules of the federal court system. And the reason the grand jury materials are usually secret is because, unlike, say, an open trial where the government is presenting certain evidence, this is a private process designed to decide whether you get to trial or not. And for many reasons of fairness, say they don't indict and move forward, you don't just release everything they ever talked about. It could affect people's lives or careers. That's generally the baseline. But there is a new law in town. It's called the Epstein Files Transparency Act. You probably recall it because it was passed over the objections of Donald Trump all year. Then at the end, he claimed he was for it. He was forced into signing it. Republicans bucked him. And that law now requires the release of a ton of different types of Epstein material, colloquially referred to as the Epstein Files, this month by December 19th. So this new ruling responds to that law, and it comes just after another judge agreed. In another case that also involves Epstein in Florida, remember there was that earlier Epstein case down there? So a Florida judge down there orders those Epstein grand jury records to also be released by the same logic. Now, this may sound like one of these legal weeds type things, but I want to point out a couple points on this with you. Number one, this is why the government, Congress, still has these vast powers. Sometimes we watch Congress and feel like they're not doing much or they're only fighting. But because of the push that we follow, the survivors, Ro Khanna, Republican Massey, and then winning over the objections of even the House Speaker, they passed this new law, the Epstein Transparency Act. And so, number one, new laws can change everything. Judges who literally last month were like, hey, you know we can't release grand jury materials, they're always secret, today are saying, if you read the law, if you read the ruling, well, there's this new law and it says release everything, and this applies to everything. Number two, we've heard a lot about whether the Trump DOJ will try to play games or hold back materials. But I want to point something out, and maybe people who think everything Trump does is wrong will have to face some cognitive dissonance, but this is coming because the Trump DOJ asked to release the materials. This is not from some critical group or survivors class action lawsuit. This is Pam Bondi's DOJ, only under pressure, of course, as you know, but the pressure worked. Both these rulings will release new Epstein files and Maxwell files from previously secret grand jury materials because the DOJ was pushed into asking for it. That leads me to point three, which is everyone's watching to see if they play games going up to December 19th. On these grand jury materials, it would appear that rather than playing games, they're trying to get the files out. They invoke the new law and ask the judges to let them release it, and that's where we're headed. So that's pretty interesting because if they later play games, say if Pam Bondi says, oh, we're going to redact everything, well, look what you have. New rulings from these judges saying, no, you got to release this stuff because of the new law.
They are flailing right now. They understand that there is only so much they can do to continue their cover-up. There is only so much power that Pam Bondi has, that the public opinion has shifted so drastically on this that there is nothing that they can do to get us to stop paying attention and talking about Jeffrey Epstein, which is what we are going to be doing on this show every single day. And if you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button, leave a like on this video. If you stuck around to the end, drop a blue heart in the comments. Keep on fighting, y'all. Don't let them silence you. And until next time, I'll see you soon.